All right, factoring out the greatest common factor. I wish I had written this, so I'm going to add it. To factor, when I factor, I'm going to rewrite a sum as a product. So keep in mind that's what you're going to be doing. So here, example A, you see I've got a sum. It's an addition problem right there. And I want to rewrite it as a product. When I look for GCFs, remember what we do is we'll look at each of the terms. So here's the first term, second term. Look for a number that will go into the biggest number that's possible that will go into both of those, which is 4. 4 goes into 8 and 4 goes into 4. And then look to see if there's a variable that's in both of them, and there's not. So I'm going to factor a 4 out of this problem. So what I'm going to have then is I'm going to have 8 divided by 4 is 2, x squared, plus, and 4 divided by 4 is 1. Notice that my sum is now a product of 4 times this parentheses. B, I'm going to look at this and I'm going to look for something in common. I'm looking for a number that goes into both 5 and 2. There's not one. I'm looking for a variable that's in both of them that's the same, and there's not one. So this can't be factored. You'll also see the word prime written for that, meaning that it has no factors. C, I'm going to look for a number that goes into both 17 and 34, and that is, voila, 17. I'm going to then look, so here's my sum or difference. I'm going to look for a variable that's in both of them, and I see they both have an x. The first one has 3 x's, and the second one has 4. So they both have at least 3 x's in them. So all I can take out is 3 x's. I see a y in both of them, so I can take a y out, and they both have 2 y's. So that's going to be my GCF. So when I do my division, 17 divided by 17 is 1, which I won't write. X cubed and x cubed cancel out. Y squared over y squared cancel out. So everything cancels, and I get a 1. I've got to put something there. So 17x cubed y squared divided by 17x cubed y squared is 1. Minus, then I have 34 divided by 17 is 2. X to the 4th divided by x cubed leaves me with 1x. And the y squared cancel out. So I get the, in my parentheses, I get 1 minus 2x. So again, my difference is written as a product. D looks a little bit different, but again, it has, when I separate, here's my subtraction. When I separate my terms, those are my 2 terms. When I look to see what they have in common, is there a number that goes into both of these? No. And is there a variable? No. But what they do have alike is the parentheses. So they're both a 2x minus 7 parentheses. So my GCF is actually 2x minus 7. And when I take that out, what I'm left with is a 2 here, and a minus, and 5a. And so that's going to go in my second parentheses. And now my difference is now written as a product. So if the leading, which is the highest degree term of a polynomial, is negative, you're going to factor out the negative of the GCF. It's just easier as we get into more complicated factoring if our first number is positive. So here I have a negative 3x squared. So when I look for this, I'll look for a number that goes into both of these. Nothing goes into both. There's no variable in both. So I'm just simply going to factor out a negative 1, and that's going to leave me with 3. So negative 3 divided by negative 1 is positive 3x squared, and positive 2 divided by negative 1 is negative 2. So factoring out the negative changes both of those signs, but I want to leave that there. So my sum is now written as a product. G, again, I have this leading negative right there, so I'm going to factor out a negative. There is no number that goes into both 3 and 10, but they do both have an x, and I can only take out one of them. So then that's going to negative divided by negative is positive, so 3, that's going to be a 3. And x squared divided by x leaves me with x. So negative divided by negative is positive 10. and then my x's cancel out, and I get this for a factored g form. H, again, you see my largest exponent is that 2 out front. I'm going to factor out again a negative 1, and it's going to leave me with x squared minus 3x plus 6. A reminder how to factor by grouping. If we have 4 terms, so we have 4 terms, what we're going to do is we're going to group the first 2 and group the second 2. I like to draw a line underneath it because I feel like when you put parentheses, it looks factored, but it's really not because it would still have the plus in the middle. So group the first 2, group the second 2. Look for the GCF and the first 2, so they both have an x squared in common. That leaves me with x plus 5. Always use the third sign in the middle of my 2 here. So I'm going to put that plus right there. My next 2 have a 3 in common, and that's going to leave me with x plus 5. So now I've taken my 4 terms and I have it narrowed down into 2 terms, here plus here. And what they have in common is the parentheses x plus 5, which I factor out and leaves me with x squared plus 3. So my sum of 4 terms is now turned into a product of 2 parentheses. Then B, again 4 terms, so I'm going to group the first 2, group the second 2. The first one has an m squared in common, leaves me with n squared plus 1. Make sure you get that 1 in there, so m squared divided by m squared is 1. The third sign is this minus, which I'm going to put there, and I'm going to factor out a 2, and that leaves me with n squared. And then again, negative 2 divided by negative 2 is positive 1. So if we take out a negative in the middle right there, using this negative right here, it's going to change the sign right here into the opposite sign, which in this case is a plus. So then again, my parentheses match. I get x squared plus 1 times m squared minus 2. If your parentheses don't match, it means you made a mistake somewhere, or it doesn't factor one or the other. So group 2, group 2. Of course, these are made to factor, but not all of them would factor in truth. So in common here, I have an x. I'm left with y plus 2. My third sign is a minus, which I'm going to put in. Oops. Okay, this one does not have anything in common, right? So if it doesn't have any common, I still have to take something out. So if there's nothing in common, I can only factor out a 1. So I'm going to factor out a negative 1, actually, and that's going to leave me with y. And because I factored out the negative, it'll change the sign to plus 2. And the y plus 2 is in common, and I'm left with x minus 1.